Well, you know, those years that we traveled around Romania, foreigners were not welcomed in that communist country. And we, in a sense, we went in a very clandestine way. We dressed down so as not to be immediately spotted as foreign tourists. There were cities where tourists were expected to visit because cities like Bucharest had historic value, but we were hitting the little cities and towns in the outlying region, cities where foreigners were not allowed. Ceausescu, the dictator at the time, did not want his people knowing how bad it was. Therefore, he didn't want them to have contact with foreigners, nor did they want foreigners under seeing how bad Romania was. So we were going to some of these cities, and one of those cities that I went to was Brăila, which is way up near to the Russian border. And I went there many, many times and was aware that the church was particularly under fire in that city. The pastor used to say to me, please don't come in a flashy way on the train, because he said the train station is crawling with secret police. They're just looking to see if foreigners are there. So on one of my visits to Romania, I had been staying in a hotel. We would often try to stay with believers, but it was getting too risky because they were not allowed to house foreigners. So we would stay in the hotel, and after I had taught for about 2 or 3 days in that city, teaching the women from the church, I got up at 6 o'clock on the morning I was to depart, realizing there was one train a day to the capital city, and I was longing to get back to Vienna. I would get on the train, travel 5 or 6 hours to the capital city, then get on a plane and fly back to Vienna. It was the end of my trip. I arrived at the train station about 6:15 in the morning, and I went over and looked at the hand-painted schedule of when the trains came. I knew the train came about 6:30, and sure enough, it said the train for Bucharest would arrive at 6:28. It would depart the station at 6:30. So I knew I had 2 minutes to get on that train when it arrived. I also noticed that the train came in on track 2, which meant not the train's track right beside the station, but the second one out. So I knew I would have to walk over the track on line 1. The train was due in about 15 minutes. I thought I better not stand on the train platform because there were policemen who walked up and down, just looking into people's faces to see who was taking the train to the capital. So I went back into the waiting room, waited till I heard the muffled announcement, the train for Bucharest is arriving on line 2. So I grabbed my little bags, went out to to walk over the track on line 1, and just as I exited the waiting room, a huge train, a train that took the farmers to their fields out in the villages, came in on line 1, blocking my access to platform number 2. And so I remember standing there thinking I could try walking around the train, but I knew I would never make it in 2 minutes. I thought I could crawl up through the train, but it was so packed with peasants going to their fields, and they had their bundles of grain and their chickens and pigs, and all their hoes and rakes and all their implements they were taking to the fields. And I thought, if I get up into that train, it's likely to start moving and I would be trapped. And who knows where that train would take me. All I remember is standing there and crying out in my heart, "Help me, Lord." And instantly there was a man at my side. I don't know how he knew that I had prayed that. I don't know how he knew I spoke English. I think he spoke to me in English. I can't remember. I just know I understood him. He said, "Follow me." Not only that, he took my 2 suitcases out of my hands, which means I gave my suitcases to a total stranger. And he climbed up into that train on line 1, and the crowd fell back as though it was the Red Sea, and we were the Israelites passing through the Red Sea. The crowd moved apart, we walked through and jumped down on the other side. As I jumped down onto platform number 2, I saw my train slowly pulling out of the station. We ran across, I jumped up onto the train, turned around, took my bags from him, and I turned to thank him, and there was no one there. The platform was empty. I remember going and taking my seat, and as I sat down, asking myself, who was that stranger that helped me get onto this train? I don't know if it was an angel or a human being, but I know that God sent someone And I suspect it was an angel to rescue me from a potentially very dangerous situation.